value, the garage spaces are actually only worth $5,000 to $10,000. So comparing that to the cost and the value and the market value is completely different from an appraiser's point of view, and that's something that should be very noted if you're doing conversion. I think there's one more thing that I'll have to ask you.
Okay, and I'll have Michael in the back raise his hand. Michael is an appraiser from a well-known institute, so you can talk to him about appraisal matters if you would like to pick somebody's brain who knows about appraisals or ADUs. Okay, good.
I think there was information about how tall a basement needs to be in order to be able to convert it. Is there
Yeah, so the minimum ceiling height for any habitable space in Portland is 6'8". That varies by jurisdiction, but that's important. That's for finished habitable space. From a best practices point of view, I'd say 8 feet is kind of minimum, what I would want to live in, and then really higher is better. So garages typically have more vaulted ceiling space, and that basements oftentimes you're right at that 6'8" threshold. And bear in mind that underneath the roof, the ceiling joists of the first floor, you're going to have to add in at least 1.5 inches. So you have to start off with 6'9.5", 6'10" to be possibly able to convert that without having to do excavation of the primary level or the basement, which could be $20,000, $30,000, $40,000.
And you were talking about hookups for tiny houses. Is that for, like, you have to be in a sewer hookup if you have black water, or is it also with gray water?
Yeah, both. Both gray water, black water are treated the same. Yeah. So you have to put all the gray water into the same system.
Okay, thank you.
For detached ADUs, is it just required for the sewer and the water to come right off the main house, or to bring like another meter in and then another sewer tap?
Great question. Okay, so the standard way that almost every property is done with an ADU is you just run the sewer you have one lateral from the street to the primary house, and then you just extend those from the primary house. So you do not have to do a dedicated sewer tap. If you did, that would cost you $20,000 or so for the amount of excavation work and cost of doing work in the street, closing down streets, so we do not want that. So generally speaking, you're going to want to have like sufficient lateral connection from the water meter to the primary house. It's going to have to be PEX or copper, sufficiently sized, like 1 inch. But even if it wasn't like sufficiently sized or wasn't copper or PEX, that work would only cost like $1,000 increase. But if you have to go into the street, that is from the meter to the water main, because your lateral from the main to the meter is only like a 3/4 inch line, and you need a 1 inch line, that will cost you like $10,000 to upsize, and that happens like a quarter of the time. And then electrical service, almost without fail, when you add in an ADU, you're going to upsize your service for electrical service from 200 amps, which is what most people have, to like 325 amps minimum, sometimes 400 amps. So that's like almost a given with ADUs. You're going to have to do that. And certainly like look at examples, talk to people tomorrow just to validate what I just said. But most of the time that's going to be the case.
So if you had a main house and an ADU, they're both in the same meter, the water.
Yeah, they're both typically going to be in the same meter. You're allowed to do a second meter if you wish. It'll cost $6,000 to do a separate, or $7,000 to do a separate dedicated 5/8 inch water meter, because the city has to close down the street, excavate the street, tap into the water main, do a dedicated water main. So you can do that. If you're conduizing the unit, you might want to do that. If you are going to have to upgrade the existing water line from 3/4 to 1 inch, it's going to cost you $10,000. Then it might make sense instead to do a dedicated 5/8 inch water line. Just to be clear, that's water. Sewer, you almost never want to do a dedicated sewer connection. You always tie into the primary house because it's so expensive not to.
You have a designated insurance broker for those who want to purchase a tiny home. I find that's very difficult to find an insurance broker for a tiny home, so do you have any suggestions?
I mean, I would just like, there's a lot of insurance providers. There's one who's Michael Cordoza, centered in Portland, based in Portland. He's been doing it for a long time. If you type in tiny home insurance in Portland, he'll be the first hit. He insures tiny homes left and right, so it's not that hard at this point. It was hard like 5 years ago, but that's been my experience. There's a forum on Facebook, Tiny Homes Portland. You can look on there. There's a bunch of references to insurance providers who've done insurance. Have you tried both those? No luck?
It took a while.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, yeah, we'll talk offline. I've been asked this before, so I've given recommendations on a thread in Facebook in that tiny house group about that. So I re-pull that up and keep that.
I'm just curious what the largest and the smallest tiny home videos you've seen.
The smallest ones I've ever seen have been like 70 feet, and that one didn't have a bathroom or anything like that. The largest ones are like 400 square feet. There's park model RVs, which is like a different standard of tiny home that are, it's a whole nother conversation, but they're quite large, 400 up to 400 square feet. And they can be up to, I think, 12 feet wide. So yeah, that's we've done a couple installations of park model RVs that are pretty big. All right, awesome. So thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. And without further ado, I'm just going to say good night and enjoy the ADU tour tomorrow.